Thank you. I'm just very briefly going to introduce the panelists. Their bios are in the programme. Starting at the end, Igli Taffa is the Director General of the National Agency for Cyber Security in Albania. Next to him, Paul Stack is from the Europe and Eurasia Bureau of USAID. Don Aviv is the President of Interfor International, a New York-based security firm. Actually, this is not Marash Djukanovic, this is Dusan Polovic, who is the Deputy Minister for Public Administration for e-government and cyber security, and he has taken the place of Mr. Djukash, who can't be here because of a medical issue, not too serious, fortunately. We wish him a speedy recovery. Next to him, Sino Klosi is the Director General of the Tax Office National Directorate from the Government of Albania. And last but not least, Brandon McCartney is a long-time cyber specialist with the US military, who's now working for Watermark Solutions and providing invaluable technical expertise. So, without further ado, I'm going to start with Paul. Paul, can you lay out the agenda that USAID has in cyber security in the Western Balkans and talk about the initiative you're leading in the Bureau of Europe and Eurasia?
Certainly, Sean. Again, for the group, my name is Paul Stack. I work in USAID's Bureau for Europe and Eurasia, including its Energy and Infrastructure Division. Now, if your first thought is, why is someone in the Energy and Infrastructure Division leading on critical infrastructure cybersecurity, that's in part because USAID initiated its support in cybersecurity, in large part in the aftermath of the 2015 attack on Ukraine's distribution system. So we mobilized our support to the electric system operators in Ukraine and then henceforth throughout the region. Then recognizing that we needed a more robust program and also with greater depth, but also with greater breadth. We needed to cover the entirety of critical infrastructure, not just electricity, telecom, finance, so on and so forth, as well as provide support to host governments. Really our priority is to ensure that a lot of the legacy investments that USAID has made to support energy security, improved health, things of that nature, as they digitalize, are not subject to compromise. So our broader goal is to really robustly support the protection and response capabilities of host governments in the civilian space, as well as their critical infrastructure operators. We do that through several different mechanisms, but one of the ones that Sean just referenced was our critical infrastructure digitalization and resilience activity. I've been told if you can say that 5 times fast, you can get a job at the US government, but that has not been confirmed. And through that mechanism, we are working throughout the Western Balkans, both bilaterally within specific countries, but also doing support that is regional, given that many of the needs when it comes to workforce development or operator level support, given the interconnectedness of systems. For example, an electricity system outage in one country, its impact does not end at the borders. Can also be addressed. So I'd be happy to walk through several examples later, but I think hopefully that lays out both the perspective of our support, its vehicles, and overall purpose.
Okay. Forgive me. So if I can move to Igli. Now, last year, the Albanian government suffered a very severe cyber attack, which was attributed to Iran. And this was so severe, there were some reports that suggest that the government had considered invoking Article 5 of the NATO Charter. What I'd like you to do is to talk about, on a technical level, what were your lessons learned from that attack? It was a very severe one. perhaps you could outline just briefly, for anyone who doesn't know, just exactly how bad it was, and talk about what lessons what the takeaways from it were.
First of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here. As you mentioned, last year Albania has been under the severe attack, which originated from one state actor, which called the Islamic State of Iran. Due to the severe attacks that paralyzed for a temporary time, interim time, the government, and the next attack it was to Albania State Police, and the next one to the banks. So, based on this series of attacks, absolutely, we understood, and Albanian government focused to empower the security, to improve the security in three pillars: in technology, in purchase, and in people, capacity building. Surely that in all of this, it is a big demands in very short terms, and the problem, the gap that we face up is directly connected with the budget. So I want to emphasize, to underline the support of our partners, especially the US, that stay close with us and support us in order to overcome emergency situation. And as a lesson learned, I can say that we classify the problems that we face up in two terms: in short terms and in strategic terms, or technical terms and strategic terms. In technical terms, we understood that we have to invest in technology, and in order to have sustainability, we understood that we have to invest in people, in training people. But we are a very small country with a lack of human resources, and this is a big challenge, and I guess that this challenge is not only for my country, but I guess that it's even for the big countries. So this initiative for join and collaborate together the Western Balkans, it's a fantastic opportunity in order to have a chance to be bigger and to be more resilient against the adversity.
Thank you. And I should add to the panelists, if anyone wants to ask a question of another panelist or wants to drill down, I'm sorry, I should add to the panelists that if anyone wants to ask a question of another panelist when they've said something or drill down on something that they've just said, please speak up. I'm going to do my best to steer this conversation and keep it lively and interesting, but definitely feel free to chip in at any point. Dusan, Montenegro also suffered a pretty major cyber event last year in connection with the elections. Can you talk about that and again give us your takeaways?
First of all, I would like to express gratitude to the organizers of this conference, especially Atlantic Council and our US partners and friends for the opportunity to speak here in this place, which means me a lot of, on a very important topics as cyber security on a regional level, of course. When you ask my colleagues from Albania about lesson learned, I will start to speaking in my head that we learn a lot of lessons in our country, really a lot of lessons. Then we understand that cyber security has so much layers which you need to enhance capacity on each layer. So we start from the beginning and we prepare the new information security law in our country, and I could pronounce that we will next month send it to the European Commission for official opinion. That is a procedure in our regional, let's say, Western Balkan country. Also, we are working on a strategic level as a very important layer, but also on awareness, which is most important, and also we are preparing more more financing for cyber resilience in our country. On the end of this layer, it is not the last one. Maybe is the most important. It is about strengthening capacities of our employees in our institutions, which is most important, and we work a lot on different fields. I could especially emphasize education in the field of cybersecurity, and mention that we are together with our friend from France and Slovenia, starting to establishing the WB3C center. That will be a regional center, international organization for education on three sub-layers: cybersecurity, cybercrime, and cyber diplomacy. And it will on position in our country, in Podgorica, on National Scientific Park. That is just briefly for a start, and also I would like to say that I am very satisfied that we have a representative from different actors in the field of cybersecurity. We have colleagues from the private sector, from government, from academic. So that is something what we also recognize in our country, that we need to synchronizing all capacity in the society, which means capacity in the government, private sector, academic sector, and also important from innovation society and ICT society.
Senna. Thank you. Senna, can I ask you, was the tax office that you run, was that impacted by these cyber attacks? And can you describe what that was like and what happened and how you were able to respond?
Thank you, Sean. First, thank you for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be today here in this event. So regarding the tax office in Albania, I'm here because the institution I represent is one of the most digitalized institutions in Albania for the moment. And I have to mention also that Albania, despite it is a small country, during the last 10 years has invested a lot in digitalization. I can say that Albania as a country can be considered one of the most digitalized one in the region, and also is competing very well also in Europe. Specifically with the tax office, we can say that we have now more than 10 years that we are investing in digitalization. We first included the phase of reporting declaration system which is fully digitalized, so communication with the business is now everything digitalized, and last year we concluded successfully the fiscalization system. So we can say that in Albania we have a system where all the businesses operate digitally with the tax office and also with the customers. I can mention also that from the government point of view, the government is investing a lot during the last years for transforming all the public services to be fully digitalized. So with this investment, the aim is that Albania to speed up the process of transforming the country to the international standards, also to EU standards, because through digitalization we decrease a lot the corruption and we improve a lot the public services. But this is the good part of the digitalization, while we have also the bad part. And the bad part, of course, is that we have so many data now concentrated in only a few systems. And concentration of the data is high risk that the country now has been exposed. And we saw it last year, what my colleague mentioned, that we were attacked through a cyber attack, and a few systems we had to shut it down and to stop the services.
This is one of the biggest challenges that Albania is facing now. Also, it's not only security issue, but we have also confidentiality issue that I had to mention that about 1.5 years ago we had a leak of data from the tax office when we had public all the salaries of the people in Albania. So these two challenges that our country is facing now, from one side the confidentiality of the data, the other side is the security of this data, the reliability of the systems are the two main pillars where now is becoming a real challenge. And putting on this also the lack of human resources, which we as Balkans countries are facing, because a lot of people now are leaving to Europe or to more developed countries, which we cannot compete them with the level of salaries that we have. It's becoming more and more difficult that this development in digitalization to be also put together with the human capacity that is able to manage this development. So,
and how long were you offline for? I mean, how long did the...
So in Albania we have this portal which is e-Albania, and the aim is that we are concentrating all the services through this portal. And this was shut down for, I think, 2 or 3 days, if I'm not correct, by some of the system, like the tax system, it was not affected at all because we are separated from this portal. But still, again, it made that the Agency of Information somehow closed everything in order to be careful and not to, still we understood where the attack was and how deep it was. So let's say it's frozen somehow some of the services. But as my colleague said, it was a lesson. We are lucky that the lesson was without many damages in the system or in the data, because we had many cases in different countries that damages has been much bigger. And it was a very good lesson that through that experience that we faced yesterday, my colleague can explain in details, there is now a lot of attention with cybersecurity. So the government, all of us have understood that it's not the challenge to develop the systems, but it's also the challenge to protect the systems. Because now, this is not the challenge of Albania, it's the challenge of the whole world. It's becoming more and more risky because now there are not any more attacks in terrorism as in old style, but now also in this style, because the risk that the countries are facing through this digitalization is very high.
So you mentioned, these attacks, and the geopolitical context is interesting in Albania, isn't it? Because this attack from Iran appears to have been prompted by the activities of a non-state group that is taking refuge there, the MEK. And Don, I wonder if you might reflect for us a little bit on the role that non-state actors can play in the cyber domain.
Sure, Sean. First of all, thank you very much for the invite to this illustrious panel, surrounded by real leaders in their respective fields. As an Israeli American, it's a very dangerous territory for me to wade into, talking about Iran and countries in the region, but I'll do my best here. First of all, let's just all admit the one thing that we're not really addressing head on is that we're all under attack. These concepts of hacks, malware, everything, this has been happening increasingly, year over year. And from our analysis, the true level of exposure, we haven't even scratched the surface. All of our systems have been tickled, all of our systems have been attempted to be breached. Likely, many of the systems that you guys rely upon around the world are currently manipulated or vulnerable to some level. And from the geopolitical standpoint, it goes without saying that cyber warfare is the new warfare, right? Yes, we're dealing with actual bombs and loss of life in active battlefields of the day right now, but what's happening globally is a total asymmetric war that will not really stop. There's nothing that stops it. There are no unified armies aside from major countries that have cyber warfare units and divisions and whole infrastructure. Most of the smaller countries in the Western Balkans don't have the infrastructure to withstand these types of attacks. And it's not just foreign actors and state actors. We have to remember that the easiest way of penetrating a system is from within. And that's the one thing that we don't like talking about. And I'm sure those on the panel, don't really want to address it either, but the reality is, if I'm a nation state or a non-governmental actor and I want to penetrate a system in any government, I'll most likely try to do it from within. And that's the easiest route of least resistance. So what we're seeing now is, bad actors utilizing and deploying new attack vectors that we don't really talk about much, and we're afraid to address on because it's not a cyber attack initiated from a foreign country. It's really a manipulation of an internal civilian or system or individual that is either disgruntled or, for whatever reasons, be it some malign belief in patriotism or monetary gain, will manipulate their own country's systems to a certain extent. So this is the new warfare. It's not so new, actually, but it's only going to get worse. And the reason we don't see or hear more about it, aside from the catastrophic malware attacks and seizures that were discussed just now, is because most of these attacks go unnoticed by the general public. And we believe that 90 to 95% of the attacks and the infiltrations that occur around the world, even to this day, this very moment, are happening without anyone's notice. And a lot of these things are, as I'm sure Brandon will go into, these sleeper activities. It's the old concept of deploying attacks and letting them just live in systems for months and months and months and years, and then finally activating them at the worst possible moment. So from a geopolitical standpoint, it's very hard to define these types of initiatives in warfare because there are no borders. It happens under the surface, and we don't really know who are the enemies anymore. Where are the true lines of demarcation? A lot of it is just happening, and and criminal rings are jumping into this game. And what we're seeing from the private sector is that nation states and bad actors are utilizing criminal networks that also don't necessarily bide between borders and can cross various borders, and they're manipulating banking systems, financial systems, energy systems, what have you, for financial gain. And they're just another attack vector against a government entity that's very, very difficult to protect against.
Thank you, Don.
Hey, Sean?
Yes, Grant.
Yeah, I think Don just pitched the ball over here, so I'll continue with that. Thanks, Don. Thank you for Sean moderating, and it's pretty humbling to be here in our capital, especially in this beautiful building and with all these leaders here. I think also, though, is not just we go unnoticed because so many attacks are happening. So we become numb to it. I think the Cyber Center of Excellence in Bosnia reported 3.8 million DDoS attacks last year alone. And they only had 2 honeypots out there that were actually registering those attacks. So, hey, electricity out, why did your network go down? A number of reasons we make excuses for it, but these attacks happen all the time. And not only do those attacks happen, but they're cheap now. It used to be the entry into being an attacker was a high level of skill. Now you have 14-year-old kids going out there, or somebody spends a couple $100 on the dark web and then let loose a bunch of malware bots that are out there just waiting for you to turn on your computer, right? So that's the scary part about it. But with that, that's the whole reason we're here talking about moving forward. Also, the digitization you know, Asina, as you said, with the tax office. I believe the last panel that we discussed smart cities. And so as we digitize all aspects of our lives, those all become attack vectors, right, or attack surfaces that that we have to go ahead and protect. So.
Yeah, if you allow me, Sean, just one remark to what Don said. We have that experience when we talk about experience, but we have that experience that we have this approach with the infiltration in our network and slipping until the execution, which come after more months. And another remarks today, it was a lot of talk about the investment, developing country, investment economy, etc. So I would like to say that if we want to, and we all of us want to have investors from Western countries, from US in our region, we need to enhance and to secure cyberspace in our country.
Sure. I mean, first of all, I agree 100% that an investment will improve, correct investment and appropriate investment in the right areas can definitely move the needle. But it's not a lost cause. I mean, the war hasn't been lost. I'm a true believer, having seen, you know, these attacks from the early days of cyber warfare to today, that, you know, much of the malicious code that we're dealing with, a lot of these things it's not new. It's been floating around for a long time, and it exists, and the 14-year-olds are weaponizing it, as Brandon said. But I'd say that there are a couple things that can move the needle, and that's purely cooperation and coordination in the region, and in regions in general. Education, awareness, and cooperation. If the countries who share borders and share like-minded beliefs get together and you know, drop the borders when it comes to cybersecurity, I think that would make a huge difference, because it's the sharing of data, it's the sharing of information, it's the sharing of knowledge. And everyone has said in the West Balkan area that, you know, we don't have the human capital, we don't have the head count, we don't have the expertise. But you know what? You bandy together, and you do, and you can attract more talent as well. And if you bandy together budgets, you pull together resources, you can actually create harden your region significantly. And I just think that's something that needs to be looked at. And I know there are initiatives underway, but not on the political level. I'm talking about the operator level. Regional security needs to be improved when it comes to cybersecurity.
In addition to the discussion of Mr. Don, in fact, it's true that you know that we are very small countries. We live in Balkan, and Balkan is very small, with small countries inside of it, with the geopolitical problems as well. And one of the problems that we face up as Albania country, firstly, I'm talking for my country, is that we face with a severe attack that we didn't know before it. And so we want just to patch the problem in a short term, in an emergency situation. Of course, in an emergency situation, we have to focus in the network and to our partners, because we have a lack of capacity and lack of capital. And for this, we have to invest in the short term, absolutely in technology. And in technology, we do this by having creative collaboration with our partners. This is the first. And in the moderate term, or in the long term, is a strategic vision. The strategic vision is how to invest in capacity, in training. Montenegro have a very excellent case in which they are building the cybersecurity hub with support of France and Slovenia. And for sure, since Montenegro is very close with, and is centered, let's say, with different countries, we can shape up the future of cyber ecosystem in Western Balkan together, in the region, together. Because we know that by sharing, by being together, we might have opportunity to have people, persons that will be experts in the perspective in the future. Another topic that give us the additional value is collaboration with the private sector. For example, in Albania, we know that the financial sector, such as banks, for example, are in the front in cybersecurity. And this is, I guess, is common to every country, because banks have more money and more investment and they can hire the best guys in their companies. So the collaboration with the private sector is another chance. So the private sector in each of the countries and sharing this group of people by doing maybe a platform that we can use, we can have a let's say legal or regulatory framework in order to share these guys to each other. We have to think about it, of course, for more technical and procedural aspects, but we might be something that, for sure, in the perspective, will overcome the problem. So, finally, I want to stress out that, we know that there are million or maybe billion of malware attacks in all the world, and there is no country that is immune. You can spend a lot of money for technology, for approaches, for standards. Of course, you are more robust and you mitigate the risk, but you cannot be 100% sure. But by being together, not only in a proactive, but even in a reactive, which is after the attack has occurred, we might have the chance that the best expert can manage the incident. So there are two pillars. What to do in a proactive way to prevent the attack in advance, and we have to collaborate in this with the private and public and with each other. This is the first pillar. And the second, what's going on after the incident? After the incident, again, we should have a platform, a sharing platform together. Of course, for this, it's not a piece of cake, it's not a very easy problem, a very easy issue, because we know that there are some geopolitical reasons that may have these barriers, but we as Albania, we have a focus to do that, and we are concentrated on that, because we have our big partners, which is US, and so if we have all of us, one partner, that we want to collaborate and to chase their advice, their plan, their project, to share the project with them, and together to be in the same line, in the same frequency, in the same page, for sure we'll overcome. If we collaborate with, or if we have, let's say, different ideas or different partners besides the US and the European Union, for sure we'll be in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, can I ask, what's USAID doing to encourage this kind of regional collaboration? And I mean, are you supporting initiatives that will, like the Cyber Academy that Dusan talked about, that will, are based in one country, but will be an asset for the whole region?
I can answer that, and just to make, I think, one point to following on what Iggy said, and actually relates a little bit to what you said, Don. It's an adage in cybersecurity that your biggest risk is not your computer, but the person behind the computer. So I think one common thread you probably all recognized here is that there is a significant need for workforce development, right? That's a global challenge, right? We have a global shortage of cyber talent, and if you go into any company, any organization, particularly in the government, there is a challenge with regard to talent recruitment, talent retention, talent upskilling, and it will be an ongoing one. And clearly, I think, as it's a challenge we in the U.S. government face, I think each of the countries face, there are opportunities, I think, to leverage that support and to think through, how best we can work with universities, private sector, to ensure that we have the upskilling, certification, curricula development, the whole 9 yards, to make sure that we're keeping up with the demand signals we're seeing from different critical infrastructure operators, so on and so forth. On the USAID examples, I'll point again, and I'm not sure who else on the panel made this actually, Sean, might have been you, but I think I noted earlier that in the electricity sector, the cyber vulnerabilities do not stop at the border. Electricity, those vulnerabilities end up being a regional problem. In the financial sector, it's global. Telecoms tend to be regional, right? So, in essence, we have, national security concerns on which we are dependent on our neighbors, particularly when it comes to critical infrastructure. So, one example, for some of the USAID support we've done is we've brought together electric system operators to run tabletop exercises. They're all part of the NSOE, the European Continental System, so it's a synchronous zone. They're dependent on one another in terms of coordinating dispatch, so on and so forth. So we ran through different simulations, right? How would you respond? That type of work has to happen at the enterprise level, where there are clear opportunities, I think, for regional engagement. And I think it also has to happen within workforce development, when it comes to information sharing, and a number of other areas in which, if I had more time, I'd have written you a shorter letter, but I could have expanded. So,
just to add to Paul, if I may, I couldn't agree more about collaboration and the issue that there really are no borders when it comes to cybersecurity. But what I'll say is everything we discuss in the cybersecurity world and in the security world in general, we're always talking about today's issues. We're always talking about today's crises and the fires that we put out today. I think we really have to focus more on the future and focus more on 5, 10, 15 years out. And the only way to really do that, in my opinion, is to invest in the youth, right? So, the brightest minds in cybersecurity, the brightest minds in technology are all, for the most part, under the age of 25. Not trying to be controversial, but that's a fact. Most of, when it comes to cyber warfare, a lot of these, the kids today are exceptional at this. They understand it, they live it, they breathe it. So how do you harness that power? You have to harness that power by educating the youth that are coming up the pipe. And they can be real game changers. Create specialized programs in cybersecurity and technology in general. Attract talent. If you can't attract talent from abroad or bring expats home, then focus on the youth that you do have. Incentivize these programs, challenge them, and make them, shining stars in your educational system. And those are the kids that will then pick up the mantle and help protect the countries going forward.
I want to back that to you, Ed, and to you, Dusan, because it seems to me that there is yes, everyone has a workforce issue, right? There aren't enough cyber experts worldwide. But it seems to me that smaller and poorer countries have a slightly different problem, which is that you can spend a lot of money training people, and then they come to America or the UK. And that brain drain issue, am I right in thinking that that's an issue, and how are you addressing it?
Yeah, you're totally right. So it's the same situation probably in all of the regional countries, but I can say for Montenegro it's absolutely right. And I would like to give just one small remark for what Don said. We also recognize youth as in the youngster is so important. So we create with the university the master program on postgraduate program on university dedicated for cybercrime and for cybersecurity, and we are starting this year with this program on national university. And also we create the Digital Academy as a broader approach to all citizens for awareness, for cyber hygiene and etc. So back to your question again, we try to do something also on increasing the salaries for information security, for information Yeah, we know it's not enough, but we try also right now in this law of information security, because in this law we recognize establishing the agency for cyber security in our country. It will be two main mechanisms. One is the government cert, which will be in charge for ministries government, and the other one it will be the agency for cyber security, which will be in charge for all others, especially for critical infrastructure, according to the NIS 2 directive. And we have prepared one article in this law for additional payment on 45% per employee, so in these two mechanisms. Yes, we know it's not enough, but it could help.
Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, is what my colleague mentioned is totally agree. The brain drain might be overcome based on, let's say, 3 pillars. The first one is the collaboration with universities, and by inject the cybersecurity curricula in the universities in order to have experts since the, let's say, master degree, and so they have the key now to collaborate, to start a collaboration, even though that, and they can accept even the low salary. The second is to increase the salary. I might stress out that in Albania, the cybersecurity expert has a very high salary compared with the rest, and so this is a vision of Albanian government in order to overcome this problem, because we understood that if you want to have a sustainability in the perspective, you have to invest in the salary of the experts. And the third, that can mitigate the brain drain issue, is the partnership with the private sectors and international security agencies. So based on these 3 pillars, we might mitigate the problems, since we are very small countries.
And can I ask, are you also trying to align your sort of structure around the NIS2 directive? Is that something that you're doing in Albania? It sounds like you already have some of these structures that Dusan is talking about creating, so just walk me through that.
In fact, since we are the country which adhere in European Union, we are obliged to fulfill the European directives in every field. As every field in the cybersecurity, we have to do that, and we follow strictly the NIS2 directive. We have been implemented the NIS1, but now it's doesn't function anymore. So from this NIS2 directive or NIS2 directive, we have partially adopted, and this is a long process. It might last maybe 1 year and 1.5 years, because it's a kind of process. And since my nation cybersecurity is responsible, and we have to underline this, not only for the cybersecurity issue, but along with cybersecurity issue are the trusted services that imply the electronic identification, electronic signature, and so on and so forth. And all of this, which is based on EIDAS regulation, which is another directive of Europe. And so we strictly follow the NIS2 directive in order to be in compliance with EU, as we are doing in every field of let's say our activities in government and in everywhere. And also we are implementing the EIDAS regulation 100% in order to be in compliance for identification, for signature, for seal, electronic seal, and so on and so forth. Based on these 2 fields, one might consider that we have adopted all the laws or legal framework which is necessary to be in order to be in compliance with European directives, and we are proud for this. On the other hand, beside this, we are investing in compliance in two directives or two pillars in technology and in procedures. And along with it, for example, we have, let's say, threat intel, audits, and so on and so forth, and all of this data collected, and we investigate the risk. And based on the risk, we do the governance and improve the governance. So we do, let's say, the overall GRC always in compliance with EU, and so in order, since we were forced to do all of this because of we have everyday attacks which are generated from everywhere, but difference with our neighbors is that we are the only country which have been attacked from one state actor. It's a very big difference because the attacks from state country is more sophisticated, and believe it or this, and we still are under this problem. We are, let's say, attacked now from state or anti-state or from Russia and anti-Russia, China, anti-China, but you know that there is a mix of problems, and we are so that all of this problem we have to be resilient against them. And why Albania is attractive to them? It's very easy, because Iranian attract the hackers, and they understood, and they got the attention from this from Iranian that in Albania, that maybe they didn't know in advance. Now they understood that maybe they can find information to sell in dark web and so on and so forth, and to do bad things. So this is a problem, because from one state which attack us, now we are attractive for the rest of, let's say, bad guys or bad country or enemy countries that want to attack us. And this is the reason why only within this year, this 2023, we are investing in capacity building and awareness, of course. But in capacity building, we have hiring, and we are under the process for hire more than 120 new guys. In a very small country, we have to do that. This is the reason why it's very important to build up, to set up the National Cyber Academia. To do Cyber Academia in order to have the chance to have persons that, or experts, in order to protect our government infrastructure, our energy infrastructure, our telecommunication infrastructure, transport infrastructure. There are more than 350 critical infrastructure that National Cybersecurity has classified. And within this year, it might reach more than 500. All of this, in all of the different sectors, need to be protected. And all of this, unfortunately, are attractive from hackers, because, let's say, the advertisement is done from the Islamic State of Europe. And the bad guys now knows Albania in the dark side. And they are, let's say, more keen on to attack Albania rather than other countries. So this is the reason why we have a very high level of attacks every day in our infrastructure, not only in government, but everywhere.
Question.
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
sorry. Russians are using ransomware as a cover for wiper, destructive malware. My question is first to USIA. Are we helping these countries move their data to government clouds that are trusted by the United States government in order to make sure that their data is protected and is there for backup if a very destructive attack occurs? Secondly, on the issue of education, I would suggest that USIA and you look into a National Science Foundation program called CyberWatch. CyberWatch was established to develop cyber education that starts in your grammar school, high school, and college levels. I was on the advisory board for 10 years. It also focuses on recruiting girls into this program. Unfortunately, our percentage of women in hard science has dropped off significantly in this country since 1960s. And I would suspect that in other areas of the world, maybe your country, you are not drawing upon those resources as effectively as you're recruiting male students. So that's my suggestion on that, and I would like to hear from Paul about if anything is being done on the data to the cloud.
Paul.
I think one point to emphasize, and I appreciate your reference to the cloud, something that we have in mind when it comes to kind of technology is that you can't buy cybersecurity, you configure it. That's what security is, right? And so we really focus on security by design principles. I think the cloud has a lot of advantages, particularly when you think about the need for systems to have a certain redundancy, right? The system goes down, have that backup data. And I know a lot of countries in the region are interested in looking at cloud migration, and our mechanisms are there to support them in that endeavor. Recognizing, of course, again, to come back to one of the points we made before, is that technology improvements and technology application is truly effective when you can ensure that the people designing and incorporating that technology know how to operate and maintain it, as well as to ensure that the processes are in place, the appropriate security controls, things of that nature, such that organizations have kind of a systematic approach to ensure things like, access control, so on and so forth. So your point's well taken. I think there's a reason why people are looking to the cloud, to your point, and we are working with countries on thinking through how they can apply the cloud to their technology, to their systems. On your point about, I think, kind of the gender gap in cyber, we're very mindful of that. As part of our activity, we do have a Cyber Pathways for Women program, because there is a broad recognition that, every country needs to harness its best capacity, and keeping folks out or prioritizing one gender over another is going to limit your national capacity to work on cybersecurity. So we are addressing that too, but are clearly not ignorant to the scale of the problem as you just addressed it. So Sean, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, mention of the cloud actually, and I'll come back to that equity issue in a second, but I just want to ask you one follow-up, Paul. Mention of the cloud. We saw in the early days of the conflict in Ukraine this tremendous outpouring of support from the private sector, and including letting the Ukrainians move data. They had to change the law to do it, but move it, to cloud, so that because data centers were among the initial targets of the Russian barrage. So my question is, are you looking to replicate that model and try and rally the US private and European private companies to provide this sort of aid, perhaps before the next war, the next time?
When Sean noted that you might ask this question to me, and I said, are you asking me on how I could work myself out of a job? And he said yes, and the reality is that the scale of the problems when it comes to cybersecurity outstrip donor capabilities to support them. We need to leverage the private sector. In terms of cloud migration, we do have plans alongside our State Department and USAID mechanisms to work with our Albanian counterparts, not just on cloud migration at large, but also the application of cloud services as part of, but that would be part of a comprehensive approach. So I think I'm always reticent to say, yes, we're going to replicate a model, because every country is different, right? Every enterprise is different, and you have to kind of scale and right-size solutions accordingly. But I will say that there are certain elements of needs and solutions, such as cloud services and migration, that should be considered, in quite a few instances.
I was just going to add that as we're talking about Ukraine, that's, you know, obviously what's happening is horrific and ongoing, but if there's any shining part of that, it's exactly what Sean had mentioned, and the fact is the private-public partnerships in Ukraine, and also just the sheer technical abilities within, you know, the educated group of the cyber class in the country is a shining example of the successes, or what you can do, or what you can achieve. Because what they have been able to do in a very short time under extreme duress is nothing short of miraculous. With, you know, just, you know, they're going up against one of the most powerful cyber actors in the world, and able to withstand and fight back. And not only fight back, you know, actually gain ground in certain ways. And this is, I'm not talking about the battlefield, we're talking about the cyber battlefield. And so moving and protecting resources, infrastructure, while nothing's perfect, and there, you know, obviously there are a lot of losses, it's very impressive. So when the book is finally written on what transpired in Ukraine on the cyber war front, I think we'll all learn a lot about it, and it'll be a model for what small countries and mid-sized countries can do going forward.
If I could just add one thing to that, is that the reason for the success had a lot to do that the cyber attack occurred, the first major cyber attack occurred on January 13th and 14th. That gave 6 weeks for the Western world to do what they did and move things to the cloud. I participated in a movie with Ukraine Heroes films called Cyber War 2022, and we cover that in that film.
And you're absolutely right, Don. And in fact, I'm trying to get a deal to write that book myself. I'm joking. I want to very quickly circle back to the equity point that the questioner raised as well. What are, and if I can ask, you know, the representatives of the governments here, what they're doing to ensure that they're not, you know, if you've got a workforce crisis, you need to recruit 100% of the available talent, not 50% of it. So what are you doing?
I want to say that, in fact, let's do a step back for the cloud. Regarding to the cloud, our migration service to the cloud, in fact, Albania has a very big and very good project with her site to migrate data into the cloud, because we consider that and we think that the perspective, the future it belongs to the cloud. And absolutely, most of the services are more resilient because the services, the systems in the cloud let's say, might be affected only from zero-day attacks and not from the attacks which are well known, in which we can phase up in the if they are on premise. If you have the system on premise, you should be very aware, it should be updated and so on and so forth. But if they are on cloud, everything is fine. So for this reason, in the Albanian government, in fact, has a lot of services that are migrated to cloud. And we think that even in a whole cybersecurity issue, especially in the Security Operations Center, system which is connected with Security Operations Centers, with SOC, with very, let's say, sensitive systems, we are thinking about, with partners, to migrate into the cloud, because we think that by migrating in the cloud, these systems might be more robust. But anyhow, this is technical aspects. This is if they are now in cloud or not in cloud, for sure in the future they will be in the cloud. Because I guess that within 10 years or maybe less, all the services will migrate to the cloud. The cloud is the future. Now, for the moment, or I'm talking about that security for the Western Balkans might be divided in 3 stages: in a short term, in a mid-term, and in long term. What we have to do for up to 1 to 2 years in the short term, what we have to do, what is the action plan for mid-term, 2 to 5 years, and what we have to do beyond 5 years, 5 to 10 years, or maybe more. Based on these 3 terms, we can let's say, create our plan, our action plan, in fact, our strategy, and let's create, let's say, a board, and in order to have this discussion and to have the plan in more concrete. But regarding to the investment in capacity, of course, Albanian government has invested in increasing the number of people or experts in the cybersecurity in government. I can say that only in National Agency for Information Society, a number of users that is the government sector, and the tax office that is a director, the number of users that are hiring for cybersecurity is more than 30, 35, I guess, something like this. Only one agency, and the number will be increasing within this year.
Thank you.
But still, I mean, despite what my colleague mentioned, in Albania this human capacity is still a challenge, and it will be one of the biggest challenges in the future years, because as my colleague mentioned before, that in Montenegro, one of the actions of the government was increasing the salaries with 30%, while Albania is increasing with 50%. Maybe Montenegro will increase again. In some positions, even we have doubled the salaries. So it's kind of even a competition between countries here, but still it's not a solution, a final solution. So the government now is looking also in the education part, how to create schemes for maintaining the students which have been educated in the country, not to leave them, at least not immediately after they finish the education, because Europe now has opened all the borders for accepting educated employees from the Balkans. So, and it's not only for cyber guys. I mean, we are talking for the whole IT team, because as I mentioned, Albania has done a lot in digitalization, but the whole team of IT guys are using these systems and maintaining them, not only in terms of security, because as the colleague mentioned, I mean, there is the guy behind the computer, which is the first risk, and then is the cyber security scheme. So it's one of the biggest challenges that the Balkan countries are facing now. Actually, we don't have any experience how to mitigate this risk. So we are open to any kind of collaboration, especially with the US, which of course, as I'm aware, has offered a lot of training. But regarding this situation of losing the workforce, I mean, it's a regional challenge that needs to be thought carefully, because it's all dependent on human resources now. So there is no final quick answer about that.
Well, yes, there are no final or indeed easy answers to any of this stuff, I've noticed. Dusan, what about on the equity point? What are you doing in Montenegro? On the equity point, making sure that you're attracting women to these positions.
Yeah, it was two excellent questions from Ukraine. Both are interesting, and I agree with the gender idea, what he mentioned. I try to think about it when he said, and I think he's right. That's one thing. The another one is cloud question. It is there is a discussion in Montenegro, of course, about the cloud question. Right now, we do not have a legal framework for cloud data. Yes, we can on the territory of European Union by our law. What would I like also to add for my colleagues, we have a massive attack, cyber attack in Albania, we have an attack in Montenegro, and we have for sure we have consequences of this attack, but we could look at another one approach, maybe that the first time we have a huge experience with the mitigation of this attack, with the remediation of our network. So we need to continue with such a conferencing and collaboration, and we must not allow that we cannot in future share information, collaboration between our countries, because we have same issues or similar, and I think that we need to collaborate more effective in the future.
Well, and that I think is a wonderful note on which to finish. I urge you all to stay in touch and continue this dialogue. But for now, we're going to wrap it up. So thank you all very much, and perhaps the audience would thank you with a round of applause.